Well, the free agency talks will never stop.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Or for Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. As always, I'm Braden Iwasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasco. Carter First, too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you head over to the YouTube page to drop a subscription there. It helps us out. And if there's any live stream shorts, videos in general, they'll all be there on the YouTube. You can also check out the Locked On Blue Jays Discord channel. You can join that to stay up to date with Blue Jays information. You can chat with us about the Blue Jays stuff. You can talk to us about podcast stuff. Whatever you want to talk to us about, that's open and available. Also, in saying that, Carter, we have the Movember page up and running. If, again, we've hammered down, we could really use all the support. We're trying to drum up some donations here. So if you have anything that you can spare, make sure you head down, click the link in the description, donate to the Movember page. It really does make a difference. Carter, before we get into everything, we got a lot to talk about today, but it is Remembrance Day. Wanted to throw that out there. Show your support. Wear the poppy. I mean, that's the least you can do, right? We've heard tons of people always talk about it. Wear your poppy. You're supposed to be a proud Canadian. You're supposed to support the troops that fought for the freedom of Canadians. So make sure you wear that poppy. It really it shows a sign of respect, and I think that's a great thing. Carter, just before we sort of kick things off, I guess we're going to talk about some Gleyber stuff. Him free agency signing with the Blue Jays possibly. We got a ton to chat about that. Where does he fit? How does he fit? Is it a possibility? We also have the Varsho injury update. It to see where he's at. If he will start the season, if he won't start the season, what is going to happen if he doesn't? And then we might get to question today. We'll sort of see how the episode goes in general. But I guess, Carter, to start this new week off, how are you doing?
Doing good. Again, overcoming the sickness from last weekend. Feel a lot better right now, obviously. So that's a bonus for me. And still immersed in this free agency talks. As we get into farther and farther into free agency, we're getting more and more links to the Toronto Blue Jays. Again, how seriously are we taking some of these? Some of them we're taking it for more face value than others. But this one that we're going to talk about today is one of the more realistic ones, I think, that we're going to be talking about for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, man, it's an interesting one for sure, right? A New York Yankee. There's been a ton of reports talking about him signing with the Toronto Blue Jays as he departs from the Yankees. There was also talks about him joining the Mets. So, a lot of teams that, this would probably upset a lot of Yankee fans if he went to some of these teams, which it seems like the Mets, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Dodgers, they seem to be the landing spot for a ton of these guys. They're the four teams in big talks with all of them. And Gleyber Torres finds himself sort of in the mix with these teams as well. And Carter, I mean, just taking a look at it, right? Gleyber Torres, second baseman. This is a positional need that the Toronto Blue Jays talked about. This was their second after the outfield, of course. Do you think it's realistic? Let's just start here. At all realistic that he comes to Toronto?
I think it for sure is. Again, you kind of went over some of the teams interested. The Mariners are another one, the Marlins, which I got that one from an interesting report. I'm not sure how much I'm taking that one at face value because I don't think Gleyber will go to Miami with their current situation. But I do think this is realistic. It's a guy that is not going to have this huge market price with some of the guys that we've been talking about before, like Willie Adames, Santander, some of those guys. One of the more realistic pieces that could help this Toronto Blue Jays team out, especially at this second base position. The way it's kind of been working in previous years before Spencer Horwitz, you could say, is you were rotating in a guy with pretty good defense or at least average defense and really wasn't performing with the bat. It was one of those positions there was kind of a black hole at the plate. Didn't really have a lot of offensive production. When you look at Gleyber Torres, when you look just briefly over his player profile, he's got the bat, he's got some power, he's got some pop, not the greatest defender. So we've said this multiple times on this podcast. We don't care about defense anymore. And honestly, for me at second base, not as big of a deal either. It comes in a little bit more into play when you have Bichette at shortstop and you want to combine those two if this is a possibility. So the defense might come up as a little bit more of a discussion with this one, but we're on the sense that we're going to just sell out for power, sell out for offense, and Gleyber Torres has been an above average hitter for pretty much his entire career.
Yeah, he has been. And I think This goes back into the whole thought process of two big signings, right? I think we've talked about the Juan Soto, the Anthony Santander, them coming here. But then you look at what is probably going to be what I've sort of read and seen is about a 4-year, $44 million contract for Gleyber Torres on the average. So I think at $11 million for Gleyber Torres, I think that is a great signing. I think that allows you the flexibility with the money still to then go out and sign like a guy like we talked about, the 25-ish million on pace for Anthony Santander. That's 36, gives you a couple, gives you that extra $15 million to then spend on bullpen and some other upgrades. So the Blue Jay, I think that this is a great opportunity for the Toronto Blue Jays to really capitalize on one of those guys that isn't going to make all-star money, but is a very good piece to surround Bo, Vlad, and whoever else you get in this lineup.
And we need offense. Gleyber had looked in August and September. Gleyber Torres looked really good. At the start of the season, when you look at the overall season numbers, not the greatest season for a guy like Gleyber, but you look at September when it actually matters. You look at the playoff baseball. This guy was performing in the big moments. Again, the Toronto Blue Jays have to get to the playoffs to be able to use Gleyber Torres' clutch moments and his playoff performances. But it's going to be a good start for an offense that was really struggling over the last few seasons. If Gleyber would sign with the Toronto Blue Jays, I could definitely see him as being the new George Springer. You saw what he was doing with the New York Yankees down the stretch. I loved that, and it was way better than what George Springer could ever offer, I think, at this point of his career. The only thing with Gleyber Torres is we used to talk about this a whole lot now. We didn't, not as much as of recently, but the consistency aspect for Gleyber. This guy is completely up and down. He's going to have months where he looks horrendous, and then he's going to have months like he did in September where he looks like one of the best baseball players in the sport. So it's going to be an up and down thing. You're going to have to kind of take this with a grain of salt when he's not hitting that well. It's going to be an emotional roller coaster, which was honestly the last couple seasons of the Toronto Blue Jays. So in that sense, it fits pretty well as well.
Yeah, and that's always a scary part of this free agency is finding those stability pieces. The problem is a lot of those stable guys that are going to put up the same numbers all the time are guys that teams just re-sign on long-term deals, and they won't hit the free agent market. So in a guy like Gleyber Torres, this is a guy that you're going to have to take a little bit of a shot on. Honestly, pretty much a lot of free agency comes down to, can you get the guy on a good year and then him pop off? That is free agency. That is how baseball works. You're not going to see a guy play, or many guys play very consistent throughout their entire career. Guys are going to have up and down months. They're going to be all over the place. You just better hope that for this season, he's more up than he is down. And that's probably part of what the Blue Jays are looking at with Gleyber Torres and sort of what he can bring. And if he can be somewhat stable, if you get a stable Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you get a stable Bichette, ideally, then I think, yeah, it's, and if you sign a higher priced guy like an Anthony Santander or a Juan Soto, I think Gleyber is just that perfect extra addition that gives you the bat, but doesn't, isn't going to hinder you defensively, isn't going to be great, but isn't going to hinder you to a massive an extent either. So I think he fits perfectly, especially in the price range that the Blue Jays are probably looking for. They probably don't want to push that luxury tax as much as, we've heard them say that they're going to be spending, they're going to be whatever. It's not, if they do go over the luxury tax, it's not going to be by much. And I think an $11 million contract with Gleyber Torres sort of fits that mold that the Blue Jays are trying to build sort of perfectly right now.
See, the thing with Gleyber Torres is, again, when I talk about Bichette, as we know, Bichette has gotten better defensively over the last couple of seasons, but still isn't necessarily where you want to be for a shortstop. And when we go into Gleyber Torres, you said it's not going to hinder you. I think if you have a combination of Gleyber Torres and Bichette, you might have some problems with your middle infield. Just going into some defensive stats for Gleyber Torres, the range is non-existent. This guy does not have very good range at second base. He was in the 14th percentile in range, and it just kind of continues to go down throughout his career. In 2022, at second base, he had 0 outs above average, so pretty much just an average fielder at second base. 2023, you go to -3 outs above average, and then this season, 2024, you go to a -4, which is, again, 14th percentile. And a weird thing as I was looking into Gleyber Torres is for some reason, his arm strength is going down, and it's at a crazy rate because you look at Gleyber Torres in 2020 and 2021, played the shortstop position, had one of the better arms in all of baseball. He goes to second base, and now he's in the 7th percentile in arm strength. I think part of this argument could be when you're at second base, a lot of those are routine plays. You're not having to throw the ball 100 miles an hour to first base. The only thing is when you have some of those double play balls, you definitely want to get a little bit of pepper on that ball because a lot of these double play balls, as you see, especially in the World Series when we were watching, they're bang, bang plays. It's half a second, one step, half a step, that makes the difference in a play. So you definitely want to steal those outs, especially when you have a Toronto Blue Jays offense that wasn't looking very good in 2024. So it kind of just, when you compound Bichette's defense with Gleyber Torres' defense, and then you have Vladimir at first, who is wildly inconsistent, and now you don't really have a third baseman that is it's at least playing every single day. Ernie Clement is there, would provide very good defense. But this might be an issue that the Toronto Blue Jays do have if they do get Gleyber Torres assigned this offseason.
Totally. And I do understand that. And I think you're right. The compounding issue of the entire infield could be a situation. But, we go back to this, right? I don't think the Yankees had the best defense of all time, and they were in the World Series. So, yes, we've seen it hurt them. In that final game, that was horrendous. But at the end of the day, this team so desperately needs good bats that I think you have to sacrifice a little bit of defense. And you talked about the arm strength of Gleyber Torres, and I sort of don't care. I sort of just, you need him to make the routine plays. You don't need him to be this superstar on defense. Make the routine plays, and that's all you need from him. You are not signing Gleyber Torres because you want his defense. You're signing him because you see the potential in his bat. And at the end of the day, that's what the Blue Jays need to be looking at. That's what the exact reason why we're talking about Anthony Santander in the field. He doesn't have amazing defense. He barely has good defense. I don't even know if he has good defense, Carter. It's just you want his bat so badly in the lineup that you're willing to sacrifice some. And we'll get into the Daulton Varsho of it, but we've talked about how Daulton Varsho can cover a lot of area. In those sense, I mean, yes, that's a little bit different with the infield because you don't have that guy to necessarily cover. But I just don't care necessarily.
Well, and we look at the biggest fish on the market, Juan Soto. He doesn't play very good defense either. You're really just selling out for the bat, and you're buying that bat, which is so instrumental to a baseball club. And when we kind of break this down as well, if you have really good pitching, you get some of these a lot of soft contact, not as many hard hit balls. Your defense doesn't really have to be that good. And the Toronto Blue Jays have some good starting pitching. Again, we talk about the bullpen all the time. That is going to be a mess that we're going to have to at least sort of solve, or at least try to solve this offseason. But if you have good pitching, you have good offense. If Gleyber Torres is going to have 15 errors on the season, I don't think that's the worst thing of all time, especially with us saying that, and obviously the fans saying it's way more fun to watch a team that can produce runs, score runs, drive the ball in the gaps, not win a baseball game 2-1, but rather maybe win a baseball game 8-5. So we've talked this to death about the defense. And even though I did back it up with this might be a problem, I agree. I don't care. I rather have Gleyber Torres' bat, an above average bat in this lineup, a guy that has shown that he can produce consistently, has multiple 20 home run seasons. He's got 4 of them in his career, has very good success in the postseason. We'll kind of break that down more in the second segment. But this is a guy that you're just kind of selling out for the offensive part, and Toronto Blue Jays need the offense desperately. So I'm on board as well. Screw the defense. Let's jump on board the offense.
Yeah, we'll be right back. I do want to talk about the fit, right, as well. The little bit of a fit. What happens if you do sign Gleyber Torres? What does that happen? What does that mean for some of these other guys on the team? We'll be right back. We'll talk about all that right after this short break. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. I'm telling you guys, take advantage of the bonus bets. It's free money in your pocket. You can use them. You can sort of sprinkle them in. You can do a $5 little bet here that's bonus. You can do a 10. You can do a 50. Whatever you feel, it'll start to compound. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out live stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I'm telling you, I'm all in on the NFL. I've been killing it this year, hopefully to continue into this week and over next weekend. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. A lot more to get into here, Carter, but I've got a little bit of a question here of what happens if they do sign Gleyber Torres. What does that mean for some other guys that are on this Toronto Blue Jays team, i.e. Davis Schneider, Will Wagner? This takes away a lot of playing time from the two, because in my head, if you think that they're signing Gleyber, that's an $11 million contract and then they're probably getting that outfielder. That would be my estimation. If they sign Gleyber, they've signed the outfielder. Those two positions now are secure. Third base is left as a platoon. That would, in my head, that's what makes sense to me. if the Gleyber does sign. What does that mean for Will Wagner, Davis Schneider, Joey Loperfido? I know we'll talk a little bit more about the outfield perspective of this in the next segment here when we talk about Daulton Varsho's injury update. But just for the second base position, I think this greatly affects Davis Schneider for one, and also Will Wagner and the amount of playing time either of those two guys get. I know me and you have debated on what's going to happen with Davis Schneider, barring a good spring training or a good spring training. Where are you at with this? How does this affect those bench pieces, those platoon guys, even Spencer Horwitz, if you want to say that as well? Where are all these guys landing?
I'm also going to throw Elvis Martinez into that discussion as well. I don't really see Bichette moving from shortstop whatsoever. Do you throw Elvis at 3? I don't like that nearly as much, so I'm going to throw him in the conversation at 2 bag as well. You sign Gleyber Torres, then again, depends what happens in the offseason. We're assuming that, again, we're going to get a fielder and then either second base or third base for this scenario. Obviously, Gleyber Torres is on the team. This takes a ton of playing time away from Davis Schneider and Will Wagner specifically. I think Spencer Horwitz is still probably fine. You can throw him in that DH spot. You can kind of throw Vladimir in the DH spot, play Spencer Horwitz at first base. I see that as kind of being the platoon at first base this season with Spencer Horwitz's primary position being at first base. But if they do make this signing, I think that it goes to show that they're not as confident in guys like Will Wagner, guys like Davis Schneider to kind of pick up the slack and have productive seasons. If they make this signing, if not both of them, at least one of them will be starting in AAA. And it is always nice to, again, have some guys in AAA that can produce throughout the season. You have some injuries, things like that. Baseball stuff happens. You're going to need some reinforcements. So I don't think it's the worst idea to reinforce that second base position. Again, when you have Gleyber Torres, you really reinforce that offensive perspective. But if you're looking at development, which the Toronto Blue Jays don't really seem like they care about development right now, they're in win now mode. So I think that's another reason why they probably wouldn't really care about this too much. But you look at Will Wagner's development, you look at David Schneider's development, you're probably going to keep one of them as a bench bat. And as we know, if you're a bench bat, you're not getting the reps, you're not getting as many plate appearances, and that's not good for a young player. So in that aspect, it's not great for Will Wagner and David Schneider. I guess you could say for those two, it's stock down. But overall, for the Toronto Blue Jays, I don't think you can be too upset that Davis Schneider and Will Wagner aren't playing when you would have an offensive bat like Gleyber Torres.
No, absolutely not. And I really liked Will Wagner. I've liked everything I've seen from him. But I think this definitely hurts them. And I think that odds are they prioritize Will Wagner's development. So they probably send him down to AAA. And they keep Davis Schneider, as bad as that is for him to not get the playing time. And I think he would be utilized almost strictly as a bench bat, especially when we talk about Daulton Varsho later on in the third segment. I think this would really hurt Davis Schneider. I don't think that this helps his career whatsoever. I think it would be better for him in this scenario if they do get Gleyber. I think best case scenario, he goes down and works through some of his batting stuff that he was having struggles with last season. And then Spencer Horwitz, I 100% agree with you. I think that he ends up playing some time at 1. Vladdy might move over and play a few games at 3 this year. Vladdy might take some games as DH. Horwitz might take some time as DH. So I think there's way more opportunity here for Spencer Horwitz, even with that second base position covered. And I think that's something you want. You want Spencer Horwitz you want to have his bat in the lineup. And I think this still gives you a lot of different choices in keeping that bat there. So 100%, I think that this is the right move. I think if you're in win now mode, I think you don't want to be relying on Will Wagner. I think Davis Schneider needs to show you more going into spring training if he wants to be a big piece of this team next season, or a piece at all this next season. So I think there's a lot to consider here with the other guys around here. Even Ernie Clement, we talk about if there's a third base signing, if there is a second base signing, that probably does take a little bit away from him as well here and there with Vlad moving over. There is a lot of components to this, Carter, that sort of go into it, but I fully believe what you said is true. And the Jays are trying to win now, trying to make a push, make signings, and they sort of are in the sense of doing what they have to do. And even if that hurts some of the guys that have been there and have tried to develop, I think they have to, because they realize that the fans are putting them in a tough position, and just the wanting to win is putting them in a tough position. They know they have to get it done now.
Well, and just another positive for Davis Schneider other than Will Wagner is he does have that left field experience. You would assume that whoever they sign as a left fielder, that he's probably going to be able to DH as well. You brought up that Vladdy's going to be moved to third base. That can happen as well. So you have a lot of lineup flexibility here. You can have Vladdy at third, you can have Vladdy at first base, you can have him at DH. Spencer Horwitz can play second, first base, DH. You have that left fielder, whoever they bring in, can also rotate in there. Davis Schneider, if you wanted to play left field as the fourth outfielder, I'm not going to be opposed to that. And at this point of these, where the Toronto Blue Jays organization is at, I don't think they relatively care as much about the prospects development because they are in such win now mode. Ross Atkins has made that abundantly clear that he wants to win, he wants to compete, he wants to make a playoff run. Again, some of the fans aren't necessarily on the same side as that, but this is where we're at. There's no point of debating anymore because this is the direction they're taking. They want to win now. They want to be competitive. So when you talk about prospects and winning now, prospects obviously take time to develop. They don't have the time. They want to do it right now. So if Will Wagner, David Schneider, Joey Loperfido have to take some hits playing AAA, again, when you look at prospect development, if they're playing baseball, I have no problem that if they're playing every single day, it's going to help them way more in the long run anyway. So it kind of could be a blessing in disguise if they do get a Gleyber Torres, they do get a left field, and they allow some of these younger guys to play all the time in AAA.
100%. That was a debate me and you had big time at the end of, or sort of the middle to the end of last season, was the fact that why weren't some of these guys sent down? If you see guys struggling, send them down. But they sort of ran out of options because they were trading pieces away and trying to make moves. They still needed to field a team for the major league clubs. So I think it would have been better for their development. And now looking at this, if you do bring in these pieces, it might actually, you're right, help their development rather than hinder them trying to go playing every fifth game on the MLB squad. So there is a lot of components here to talk about the rest of the team. Carter, do you have any? I know you had still one more thing you wanted to get into with Gleyber here.
Yeah, we didn't actually really go over his stats at all, which we normally lead off with. A little bit of a different mold for this episode, so I'm just going to quickly dive into it here. Again, during the first, honestly, half of the season, Gleyber Torres not that good. September, really good. August was a lot better as well. But overall, 257 average, 330 OBP, slugging of 378 for an OPS of 709. OPS plus just over league average at 101. This kind of comes as more of a down season from Gleyber. So another buy low candidate. We've talked about that a lot. You don't necessarily want to buy guys that are on their best seasons of all time. But again, you got to take some merit in that if they had very good seasons, especially recently. You're going to take more merit from that than a guy that hasn't necessarily been good for 2 years in Gleyber's sense. This last year wasn't great. But overall, when you look at another bonus for this guy is the playoff experience, the playoff success. When you look at some of the Toronto Blue Jays, there's this notion going around that the Blue Jays can't win with Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They don't perform in the playoffs. There's a little bit of validity to that. Again, I'm not as worried about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bichette. I'm more worried about the surrounding cast and what kind of position that Ross Atkins is going to put this team in. But going into Gleyber Torres' stats, I'm going to go into 2024 and then also just give you his career stats as well. In 2024, he hit 241. Again, not the greatest average, but he has a slugging of 397 and OPS of 744. Overall in his career, 267 average, 359 OBP, and then a slugging of 436 for an OPS of 795. When you look at Gleyber Torres, again, these numbers are a little bit inflated from 2019, where he had an unbelievable season. I believe it was 38 home runs. Don't necessarily expect that from Gleyber Torres, but like I said before, this guy's hit 20 home runs 4 times throughout his career. The Toronto Blue Jays last season only had one guy that hit over 20 home runs, and that was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You got to hope that Bichette can get close to that mark. You got to hope that Dalton Varsho can get close to that mark. Maybe whoever they bring in at left fielder can provide a little bit of power as well. But you get Gleyber Torres in there. He had 15 home runs this last season. I think that is the absolute floor. I don't see it going any lower for Gleyber Torres. And Gleyber Torres is hot. He is one of the best second basemen from a hitting standpoint in the league. So we're at, again, I'll end it with this. Screw defense. I don't care about Gleyber Torres' defense. You want to bring in an above average bat. You want to bring in a guy that has consistently done it at the major league level and kind of solidify your position at second base.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This is obviously, looking at the stats, his worst season on paper for Gleyber Torres. And I think you've seen what he can do. I think, I don't know when it was, if it was a week or two ago, we had the debate on how do you know when a guy is a good baseball player after how many seasons? Well, if you look over all of Gleyber Torres' seasons, he is a very good baseball player. Yes, guys can have a down year. We've seen that with Bichette. Bichette is a good baseball player. You don't take merit away from one bad year. You take merit away from everything they've done prior to that. And so I think this is a very, very good option. I know me and you've had these conversations about, wow, this might be one of the guys here. And I fully believe that with all the articles and everything coming out, it does sound like this might be one of the closest to like reality that we are at here. So I don't know, Carter. At the end of the day, I'm very happy with this. If this does come to fruition, seeing him in the playoffs, seeing what he can do, over the past, 6-7 years now, it really has been. It's nice to see that he might be coming to the Toronto Blue Jays and might be making that decision to come here. But we'll have to wait and see. I think this is a great option for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Well, there's another benefit as well. Gleyber Torres coming to the Toronto Blue Jays makes the New York Yankees worse. The same argument that I have with Anthony Santander. So anytime the Yankees are going to take a shot, going to take a hit, I'm going to love it, especially if it makes the Toronto Blue Jays better. So it's really a win-win scenario here with Gleyber Torres. And what we've really been hoping for, like we talked about a little bit on the last episode, I'm kind of talking myself into this, maybe being a little bit delusional here. I am really hoping that Ross Atkins has screwed the luxury tax and just decides, you know what, we're going to get a left fielder, we're going to get a third baseman, we're going to get Gleyber Torres at second base. We're really going to go all in. If he's so serious about making this team competitive, let's see it. Again, I've said this multiple times. It's put up or shut up time for Ross Atkins. Hopefully he can put up and sign Gleyber Torres along with some other players to bolster this offense, and then obviously the bullpen as well. A lot of moves to be made. Maybe we start with Gleyber Torres.
Yeah, man, I agree. We'll talk about this more as the story sort of develops over the next few weeks. But in saying that, we also have to get into Daulton Varsho's injury. How does that affect the team? Will it affect the team? For how long? We'll bring you guys all that right after this quick break. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. I know I've talked about this before. Game Time has their new feature called Game Time Picks. Makes it even easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, sort of whatever you want to buy tickets for. It's on Game Time. They have their all-in pricing, which toggling this feature shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at the checkout. Something that gets on my nerves more than anything else when I go to buy tickets. And then it's an extra $20, $30, $40 more at the end. I get super, super frustrated about that. Seat views, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. If there's two tickets that are pretty similar in price, you want to see which one has the best view. You want to see where you want to spend your money. It gives you that feature as well. They have the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Carter. I hate talking injuries, my guy. I really do, especially when it's to our unbelievable Gold Glove, possibly Platinum Glove center fielder Daulton Varsho. But this is where we're at, I guess.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Daulton Varsho, obviously rotator cuff surgery, major surgery at the end of the season. Not exactly an ideal timeline to do it, but you'd rather have Daulton Varsho take the first maybe month off of the season at max, and then be healthy and a great outfielder, one of the best outfielders in all of baseball for your Toronto Blue Jays team again. So this leaves us with a debate, though. Multiple reports have come out and said it's unlikely that Daulton Varsho will be ready for the start of the season. So, again, it's maybe going to be into April, maybe slightly into May at worst. Are you really going to sign a guy for a month when Daulton Varsho's out? Probably not. So what are the options left for the Toronto Blue Jays?
Well, so your options are going to be, there is going to be an outfield signing. So you will have one guy locked on. I fully believe that they will get somebody for there. Not saying that it's going to be Juan Soto or Anthony Santander, but you're going to have a guy there. So you have to take that into consideration. But then we've already talked about a couple of these guys, right? Joey Loperfido, Davis Schneider. And I think it's going to be either one of those two guys or a mix of both of them that will slot in. And I think you have to expect George Springer to probably slot in at center field just with his defensive prowess that he has had. I think you got to keep that in the back of your mind for the start of the season as well.
I think we'll just say for this scenario, left field is Juan Soto, just because we'll manifest that a little bit for this podcast. You're right. George Springer going to be center field. That leaves your right field. So I guess you could either throw whoever you sign right field, left field. Again, I don't think there's too much of a difference there. It's just really which way you're aiming for the ball. I think instead of Joey Loperfido, they would look to Nathan Lucas, a guy that showed he was very good at the end of last season, a guy that would be a very good fit for this role where, again, you're not relying on him for the entire season, but if you have to rely on him for a month, whether he's good or bad, I think that he's going to be serviceable. In best case scenario, you have a problem with Nathan Lucas hits 300 again and is on base at a 400 clip, and you're like, oh, do we really want to send this guy down? He's being very productive. Let's try to get this guy's bat in the lineup. So that's, again, best case scenario. I think as Nathan Lucas goes there, you have David Schneider still on the team again. Probably with his versatility in the outfield, in the infield, you can kind of play this guy at a lot of positions. I think he's favored over a lot of these other guys. So David Schneider is going to be an option down the stretch as well. Probably get some fairly regular playing time at left field like he was this past season. So it really just depends on how long Daulton Varsho is out. That we'll get more of a timeline again as we approach spring training. Maybe there's like a minor league signing, maybe some little signing as well. If you think it's going to be a little bit longer once we get towards the end of the season or the start of the season, sorry. But for this offseason, I don't see them making a big splash. Like, there's no point of signing a guy for $5, $6, whatever $1 million when you're going to have Daulton Varsho back, who might be the platinum glove in your outfield.
Yeah, and you're right. I sort of did forget about Nathan Lucas, and that's definitely an option for this team. I think he's shown that he can play pretty good defense as well, and he's makes the right reads and everything like that. So, and yeah, you're right. In the chance that he has a great season and hits 300, then fantastic. And I think you're probably looking at Joey Loperfido, David Schneider as two bench bats, so you have their option with Daulton Varsho out. That'll give you another roster spot. That's probably where Nathan Lucas comes in to serve as part of that role. It might be a three-man rotation with those three, just see who does best and see who fits. But yeah, at the end of the day, George Springer, we've seen that he's very good defensively, that can make the right reads. Yes, he's not going to be Dalton Varsho. I mean, nobody is Dalton Varsho right now. So you just need George Springer to play the good defense that he's shown he can play. And again, how much do you rely on the defense if those bats can come in hot and win you the games? Yes, George Springer can still make unbelievable plays. So I don't want to really take anything away from him. He is still a very good defender. But, he's getting older. He's getting a little bit slower, and some of the reads aren't as crisp as they once were. But I still have total faith that he can play good center field for this baseball team.
Yeah, I think at right field, he had one of the better defensive seasons I've actually ever seen him play. And this is a guy that was at center field throughout the majority of his career, obviously making that transition in 2024. I think if you have to have George Springer at center field for a month, my only concern is when George Springer has played center field, he has been an injury machine. He gets injured left, right, and center. You got to knock on wood, hope that he doesn't get injured, obviously, because he was playing very good defense. Looked really good on the base paths, too. So I think that attests to his speed. His stolen bases were up there for his career. I think they finished around 13 or 14. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But with George Springer, if you can, it's a guy that has a ton of experience at center field, way more experience at center field than he does at right field. So with that sense, not really going to be a problem for center fielders. I think it's just hard to speculate about who will get this spot because we're so far away. There hasn't been any free agency signings yet. There's multiple things that can happen. So it's going to be interesting to see which direction the Toronto Blue Jays take.
Yeah, Carl, you're right. It's all a wait and see because at the end of the day, there could be other injuries. There could be other signings. There could be anything else. And I'm sorry for some of you who saw my face. We did a little bit of a cut there because our doorbell rang, if you heard that in through any of the mics, because and this is going to be a little bit of an off the ball little rant for me here. Okay?
Instead of, we're not going to have time for question of the day, unfortunately. So we're going to have quote of the day. And it's probably going to be Braden explaining the story.
So throughout the past, year, the Bell comes down to our house and rings our doorbell or knocks on the door. And they talk to us about Wi-Fi packages, phone bills, whatever. And through work, I get a pretty good deal on Wi-Fi and my phone bill. So I don't worry about, and I always tell these guys, take us off the list. Like I have a conversation with them. I usually try to be nice and I'm like, hey, listen, I go through with them. I'm like, we don't need this. Please take us off the list. And they keep coming back. And I get so mad because every time we have nobody that visits our house. Like the two of us live here. Our other roommates are Buddy, Justin Powers. We've talked about him on this podcast many times. At the end of the day,
you've seen him too.
Yeah, and they've seen him too. But at the end of the day, I know when that doorbell rings, it's either an Amazon package, which I didn't order anything, or it's the Bell MTS guy is coming for the 900th time. So I literally told this guy, I'm like, buddy, take us off the list. I've told you 9 million times. Like legitimately, I've had this same conversation 1,000 times, and it just gets to the point where I'm just frustrated. Because like one time it was at like 7 a.m. that these guys came down. One time it was like late at night. Like I was trying to like go to bed for a morning shift, and the doorbell rings late at night. I'm like, what's going on? How are you paying these guys at the ridiculous hour to come down to our house and badger us about Wi-Fi? Like, God, I've already had this conversation, Carter. I just gotta. Maybe this is how I end it because I live it right now.
Hey, they're committed to the grind. You didn't even use the quote of the day. The quote of the day was, "You're not going to beat my package," but you didn't even say it in the explanation. But it's funny because I'm usually out when these guys come. I really haven't had many experiences. It's just maybe they know that Braden's around and he loves talking to these guys so much. So they like to just be graced with his presence. But back to the Gleyber Torres stuff and sort of the Daulton Varsho injury. It's tough to speculate right now. We're just gonna have to see what moves they make. If they sign a bunch of guys, again, we'll be able to tell a little bit more clearly once we get after the new year into January and then February months.
Yeah, man, that's what it comes down to, right? All of this free agency is a lot of just sitting and waiting because at the end of the day, we're not the ones making the moves. We're not the ones making the decisions. It is fun to speculate. Like this is such a fun time of year surrounding baseball, Toronto Blue Jays. sort of in our lives, I mean, this is what we're talking about like 90% of our day. We woke up this morning and we started talking about free agency just immediately. So, yeah, fun time of day. Let us know what you guys think. Just who you think the Blue Jays shine. Is Gleyber Torres going to be a good fit? What happens to the other pieces? Who becomes a bench bat? Sort of let us know your opinions. If you have a question today, make sure you drop it in the comments. Type QOTD before the comment so that we know it's a question of the day, and we'll maybe answer it on a future episode of the podcast. Insane Carter, what an interesting Monday episode, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good way to start. That's the fun thing about free agency is that you can predict that everyone's going to go to the Toronto Blue Jays. You can't get disappointed yet because nobody signed anywhere. You could say Juan Soto, Santander, Bregman, Adames. You could do Clay Holmes, whatever you want to do. Everyone's going to the Toronto Blue Jays. Pete Alonso will throw in there. So the Toronto Blue Jays is going to be an absolute wagon until Ross Atkins proves us wrong.
Exactly. Thanks as always for watching. You can we appreciate you guys making us your first listen every day. If you want to find a second listen, go check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan. Sully runs a great show over there. Thanks as always for listening. Make sure you drop that subscribe button if you haven't already, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.